So hi everyone, we're back with you for another episode of the AmBIssadors. I'm Vaneet,
I'm Lo.
and today we are joined by a lovely guest. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Hunter Malik, and I guess I'm now like the ex-panda in charge of the London Bi Pandas. I'm a Muslim trans drag artist and activist, and yeah, it's nice to be here.
Thank you for joining us.
So today we want to talk a little bit about bi activism, and we want to talk about London Bi Pandas, why it started, what you did, key highlights, like some of your favorite parts of London Bi Pandas, and then also why you closed down, and then on a personal level, what you're doing next. So I guess we should maybe start with some talk about bi activism.
Yeah, so Hunter, how did you start getting involved in bi activism?
Purely like accidentally. My activism history was kind of focused on like women and domestic violence for a really long time, particularly in Pakistan, which is where I'm from. So it felt like something that was like quite close to my heart, because it's something that a lot of like kind of women experience within my family, and like literally everyone, like I think the rate of DV there is like 94%. Every woman has experienced domestic violence. So it was something like really, really important. And I kind of got swept up by this like amazing activist and like creator and maker and overall kind of like leader. So I helped launch this startup, techie, charity, NGO, community group thing. And was doing like quite a lot of really exciting stuff with them for a really long time. And then I obviously burnt myself out, which is a pattern, as we'll hear in a second, of every activist. And I ended up taking like, I think about a year off to just kind of replenish and recharge. And as I was sort of doing that, towards the end of that, I saw a Facebook status from one of my old acquaintances who was sort of saying that year there were going to be no bi floats during London Pride, I think 2019 now, last year. And they sort of went like, does anybody want to do this? Who wants to help out? And I was like, oh yeah, sure, why not? What do we need? Let's make this happen. I think it was like 24 hours before the deadline, and I was on a coach coming back to London after a festival with just my phone with like minimal battery. And this person, they were like, well, we need like a community group, we need a website, we need to like answer all of these questions, we need some sort of like social purpose. And I was like, sure, we can make this happen. So I like used my phone to set up a Facebook group of like bisexuals. I used a Tumblr to make a website basically. And yeah, we made like a new Gmail, and we were like, what should we call ourselves? And there's kind of been this like running joke within all of the bi people that I know about the bi panda syndrome, which is basically when bisexual people haven't been socialized to find multiple genders like attractive and have limited experience in that as well, so they're less likely to flirt with, have sexual relations with, have relationships with people of multiple genders, because they're so used to just that one gender that they're socialized to be with. And so like pandas, they don't have sex, and that's the joke. So we decided to call it Bi Pandas because I felt really funny at the time, and I was very hungover. And so it ended up getting accepted into Pride, which was really exciting. And then as this sort of snowballed, we were like, well, actually, here's a whole bunch of people who care about a lot of stuff, and here's an opportunity for us to do something with it. And I think that was kind of like my introduction to bi activism, was accidentally starting this group on the basis of the fact that we weren't going to be in, that there wasn't going to be a float in Pride, and it obviously ended up being a float in Pride. Outside of that, I don't really have a lot of connections with the sort of bi activism area. I've only sort of come out as bisexual, I guess, like even like after this float kind of went out, because I was very much like, I'm a pansexual. And now sort of shifted over into kind of accepting bi as the umbrella term for my own sexuality. And I think, so I haven't really been part of the bi community. I grew up Muslim. I didn't really sort of dismantle my own kind of parameters for my sexuality until quite a few years ago, like 3 maybe. I think I was officially came out as like bi or pan 3 years ago. Very, very new baby bi. That Pride was my like first proper Pride of like marching in Pride, like So it's like super exciting, and that's kind of my little stumble down into bi activism.
I don't know any activists who were ever like, yeah, I totally meant to do this. Like, obviously, because I'm quite involved with activism as well, and so are you, Vaneet. Like, everyone I speak to about how they got involved with it was just like, it just kind of happened. I don't really know. I don't know how I got here. Now I run all these different things, but I didn't plan any of this.
I didn't plan any of this, and now I basically have 2 jobs. That's fun. It's not stressful. What I really like about the London Bi Pandas name is that it has bi and pan in it as well, which is like, I know you said that it's bi pandas because they don't have sex, but it's also bi pan, which is kind of like a nice
that was totally intentional.
I also really like that sorry. It also really subverts the stereotype of like bi people being greedy and, you know, having sex all the time and being insatiable, when actually among ourselves we're like, no, we don't know how to do this.
Yeah, honestly, it's there's been so many times where I've sat around on a table full of like bi or pan people, and it's like, are you getting any? No. Are you getting any? You did? Why are we all single? What the hell is this? And what I really love as well is, like, you were saying how all of this is quite recent to you, and it's something I can relate to as well, because like I only came out 3 years ago as well, and I only really marched at Pride at the same one, well, the one before London Bi Pandas was in, like 2018 was the first time I marched at Pride and I was ever really involved. And yeah, the time before that, I was like, I'm here as an ally, of course, ally.
Yeah, I think when it comes to Pride as well, I have like a really kind of complicated relationship with it, because I obviously like didn't want to take up space at something that I felt like I was always like not invited to. When I was a bit younger, I had I had a really close friendship with like a woman who was gay, and she made it really clear that I was straight. She was like, "You're straight because you like men," and so whenever we'd go to like places together or bars together or gay bars together, she'd make it really abundantly clear that I was there as her guest, that I was not invited into the space. And I think that really kind of stuck with me, because for a really long time I was like, like a lesbian thinks I'm straight and she's the expert in being gay, so she must be right. You know, I'm definitely straight. And it took I think I like reassessed my gender before I was able to reassess my actual sexuality, because of this kind of entrenched, almost like binary view of like gay or straight. And I think, and then when I was able to dismantle whatever gender is, it became easier to then attack sexuality afterwards. And it's still kind of a learning curve for, I think, many bisexuals to be able to like assert their space, their kind of entitlement to that space as well. And that's like, despite the fact that we're the biggest majority of that entire acronym, the fact that none of us feel welcome in these spaces, it makes me really, really sad. And I think that's why also the Bi Pandas was really important, because it was a space for bi people and allies of bi people, which I think is a phrasing I've never really seen anywhere else in any kind of other LGBT spaces, which has always been like allies generally. But it's like, no, we must be allies of us to be here.
Yeah. I really like
Tell us more about London Bi Pandas, the first time they started marching in Pride. Tell us more about the float and like what went into that.
Gosh, the float was made with like the blood, sweat and tears of a bunch of tired, burnt out bisexuals. Most of the team who were kind of organising this had also started another project at the same time, which was going disastrously wrong and was becoming very complicated and a whole ass mess. And so we're trying to manage all of these things at the same time. And it was a huge challenge, because we're also like at the infancy of our group. We're struggling with like, you know, if we're going to go and do kind of like a bit of a protest at Pride, because all of us do believe that Pride is a protest, do we have credibility as activists to go and make that stand? What have we done to kind of justify that we can stand there and sort of screech about guillotining the bankers? You know, what's our history as a group? We've just started in March, and the parade's in the first week of July. So we had like 3 or 4 months. So while also kind of planning the idea for the float, which was protest, that was it. That was just the theme, the fact that we wanted to reclaim Pride as a protest. We're also managing, you know, our own history as activists at the same time, because we were like, we're going to be on this kind of center stage somewhere, and people are going to be like, who are these people? What have they done? Why do they get to shout about it? So we actually spend quite a lot of time trying to engage with the topics that we cared about and having challenging conversations and trying to inspire like activist action and radical action at the same time as doing the float, because we felt like, again, I think this is the whole like imposter syndrome of being a bisexual is just so ingrained in you that you feel like you belong in no spaces unless you have the CV to back it up. Like, here are my gay credentials and here are my activist credentials. I'm allowed to be here. It's still taking me a while to, I think, dismantle that. And so we got swept up quite a lot in some of the different conversations that were happening around Pride, such as like the fact that there was a lot of sponsorship from BAE systems and different other kind of organizations like the Home Office and the military and the police and whoever, and we were like, well, these obviously don't have a place in Pride. We should do something about it. So we got swept up in the campaign against BAE systems. I think we did like a BAE systems a terrorist banner drop, which went disastrously wrong. It was a complete mess. It was our first, our first like banner drop. I've never done a banner drop, or like a bridge banner drop before in my life, and I don't really know what we're doing. So we decided to get sewed 2 bed sheets together. I had some like old like wall paint still in my flat, and we created some like handmade stencils from paper, like out of an art book that I had, and we like painted this banner that just said BAE systems are terrorists, and I think one of us then tried to use like a painter's brush to draw a panda on it as well, and it was all sorts of bad. And then the morning of the banner drop came, and actually we had like quite a good turnout of people, which I was really surprised by, because it was a Sunday morning at like 7 a.m. And like somebody was supposed to come over the night before to help weigh the banner down, and sew like bags of rice into the bottom of it, but they never came, and they're like, oh, I'll come in the morning, and then they never came. So in the morning I was like googling how to sew as I was sewing bags of rice. Definitely I did not have enough rice, not in the slightest. I think like I had like one of those like little tiny packs of like 500 grams or whatever it is, I'm such a bad like brown person, I don't have a big sack.
Our Asian person only has a small bag of rice.
And so like I think I put some in it, like a little bit in a sock, like about the size of my fist of rice, right? And 2 of them. And so I like googling how to sew and sewing for the first time. And then we got to the bridge, and we tried to like throw the banner off the edge, and we were all really nervous about police because we'd never done anything like this before. And we're all like waiting there with our camera and our photographer to just capture it and get the hell out. And then we sort of threw it over, and it went right back into our face. And then we tried again, and it went. And then we tried like a few times, and it just sort of flapped in the air, and you couldn't see anything. This was our first piece of activism, by the way. Like our first. This is how it was going.
Incredible.
And so we all kind of
doing.
it was such a disaster. We all sort of like ran back and tried to regroup and tried to like look inconspicuous as we're doing it. And then we ended up like kind of we basically climbed on top of each other and like held it up, because it was like 2 bed sheets tall, just to get a photo of it in its like kind of full glory. And we sort of managed it, and it kind of looks cool if you don't look at it too hard. You can kind of see my backpack poking out from the side as there's like people's butts sticking out. And yeah, so I think we were really inspired by that particular moment to try and do better, to try and like do more action. I think that was like really energizing and exhilarating to be able to like go and make this like really public stand. Nobody noticed, of course, but we definitely did. And I think we wanted to like felt really empowered by being able to go and do something. And I like that kind of set the tone of like this chaos group that just sort of goes and does whatever they want on the things that they want to do. So it made it really kind of democratic in a way. Like, if you care about something, let's just go and do something about it. The first float was all about like Pride as a protest, and we decided to wear black as much as possible, to kind of strip out the rainbow from our float section, because we felt like everybody else is going to go hardcore on rainbows and all of these sort of things, and we really wanted to kind of stand out. So we stripped all of the colours as kind of like a comment on like rainbow washing as well, to kind of go, hey, let's make like a kind of visual statement here. We spent like a whole Sunday, I think 9 hours, making placards in our pants in somebody's garden, where we basically wanted to highlight all of the values, all of the causes, all of the things that we care about, that we felt were like really relevant to not only being a queer person, but a queer person in London, in Britain. And we kind of talked about all of the intersectionalities of everybody within the team and within the group. We're talking about like decriminalization of sex work, we're talking about like racism, supporting people from refugee backgrounds, and just having all of these placards that said all of these things that we really cared about. There were some funny ones around like being bisexual and the kind of the whole like gold star gay or gold star lesbian standard that's really problematic, and sort of commenting on like our inclusion within the wider community spaces, commenting on like the economic system, commenting on Boris Johnson, commenting on like bankers, everything and anything that we cared about. We decided that was the moment to make that stand, because I think one of the core parts of the London Bi Pandas was that we're not just a bi group about being bi and all we do is talk about being bi. What's really important here is that we don't just connect over our sexuality, we connect over the things that we care about outside of that. And our sexuality can be a part of that. There's some overlap there, but actually it extends significantly beyond that. So we want to get involved in everything that matters to us, and isn't just focused on being bi, because I felt like when we were setting up that group, that would limit us quite a lot as a trans person, as a Muslim person, as an immigrant, as a poor person, as a disabled person. Like there's a lot of intersectionalities going on with me personally, and I felt like a lot of the spaces that we were, that I see around don't really include any of those things. They felt very specific or very niche. Yes, I know there's a queer Muslim group. Yes, I know there's a cutie pot group. Yes, I know, but like I want to kind of be myself, all of it at the same time, and I don't want to kind of compromise on that or pick specific parts. And I know that those spaces are really important, valuable, and they definitely should exist. But it felt really nice to have a space where I could just be all of the elements of myself in one space and have an opportunity to shout about them and try and make change happen around it.
I think that is a key problem as well, because I think you have a lot of like QPOC groups, but a lot of the time they are still quite gay focused, and then you have a lot of like bi groups, but they can be very white dominated, and you have that balance where you're like, when I'm both, where am I supposed to go? And there's always that lack of intersectionality, and even when you get that intersectionality, like sometimes those groups aren't big enough or they don't do enough, so you can't really engage enough with it. And I think it's really important because like even when there are certain things which may not be something that's personal to you or even anyone in the group, there's these words that like Lady Phil said once, which really resonated with me. Is like, my fight has to be your fight and your fight has to be mine. And I think that's really important, is that even if this isn't something that affects you personally, you should be fighting for everyone, and that's always the point.
I was going to say, like, your flow seems so much more planned out, because I was part of like the project that did the first Bi Pride float in 2018, and we just spent so long, like, again, it was like a group of activists who, we didn't have like a website or a group for the float. We just we're each doing like our own projects, and we were like, right, we've got to like get this done now. And so much time and energy went into like the admin of it. I don't know if you found that, but like hiring a truck, insurance, like all of that stuff was a nightmare, to the point where we kind of didn't have to write insurance when we did it. Like technically people weren't covered when they were on the back of the float, but they were covered if you're on the ground, because then you're part of like Pride in London. So we joked and we were like, right, if someone has an issue, if they start falling or they look unsafe, push them onto the road, because then they're Pride in London's problem and not our problem, because we don't have insurance. And like luckily everything was fine.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I think we're quite lucky in that one of the people who was organising last year was part of the team in organising the float the year after when we were doing it. And we already had like all of the resources on some of like on the truck, so I think we got the exact same truck as it was last time. Okay. And like we parked at the same place that it was parked the year before, I think the main admin had been trying to get manage a lot of the team in the background, because there was not necessarily a very cohesive, unified vision, which can be really, really complicated. For example, I've been trying to make it really clear to people that we have this vision of stripping away the rainbow to make this very specific point. It's not that we're stopping people from carrying the bi flag if they want to. It's not if we're telling you that you absolutely have to do this. If you have a huge problem, then please go ahead and wear whatever you want. You don't have to adhere to a dress code. I think I was called oppressive for asking people to wear black. I was accused of putting people in danger because it was going to be a hot day and they're wearing black. And there was a lot of I think anger behind trying to push people to do something a little bit different. Pride is so precious and so important to lots of people, and it's done in a specific way. It's all about this kind of the one day of expression that you truly have, where you can have all of the fucking rainbows everywhere and all of these kind of things. But I think that was also, for me, felt like a really Western view of pride. The rainbow itself it is a Western icon for being queer, for being gay, for being bi, for being LGBTQIA. And as someone who grew up somewhere particularly Muslim, I didn't have those icons and I didn't have those codes, so I don't have the attachment to them. And I think kind of the focus on them also continues to perpetuate the sort of Western ideal of what it means to be queer. And that's something that I've always had a problem with as a queer brown person. And so, I think it was really easy for me to kind of go, we're all going to wear black. I'm an angsty goth. Let's make this happen. You all must have black, come on. Whereas for this person, or for these groups of people, it felt something like that was actually potentially quite damaging. And I think having those conversations was really hard. Trying to make everybody happy was really hard, because that was never going to happen. I think coming to terms with the fact that not everybody's going to be happy with what we're going to do, but actually it was more important to get the message out that pride is a protest. That was the crux of it. And I was like, we can't do the protest if we're conforming to what pride should be, if we're conforming to these Western ideals, if we're conforming pride's kind of establishment as a celebration, as a parade, as all of these things, and if we continue to use the icons and codes and elements of that, we're conforming to what pride is, rather than protesting pride for not being a protest. So yeah, I think eventually everybody turned it out as well. It was phenomenal. I was really not expecting everybody to adhere to it, to the dress code, which wasn't actually that complicated. It was please wear black or white, we're pandas. just do that. And I think what was really nice about it as well was that we didn't lose the party element of pride. The way that queers party is actually really political and really radical, and it's really important to continue to be able to do those things. And so the fact that we were all in our protest aesthetic gear, with all of our placards with techno playing out of this massive sound system called Dorothy, and everybody sort of dancing around and having a really great time, but also feeling really empowered and really passionate and really able to shout about these things. I don't think I put my fist down for the whole 3 hours or whatever it was. My arm was very dead by the time I got to the end of the parade. But it kind of goes to show anyway that you can have a celebration, but you don't need to lose the protest element of it. I think that's one of the statements that I really wanted to make, was that party is important, but so is the message, and you can't lose either one of those. They're really integral to being proud of who we are.
There's that great quote that reminds me of, it's not my revolution if I can't dance. Because I think that's such an important part of how queers protest as well.
Yeah, and I think there's it's really important to continue to retain that kind of joy of who we are, and party is an element of it, and dancing is an element of it. The fact that it's still quite shocking to see same-gendered people dancing together. that it does become a radical act, and like our queer spaces and our queer bars and our queer clubs are so radical in their existence, and the fact that we go and utilize those spaces to be able to express who we are, to be able to play with who we are, to be able to like find new codes of who we could be, is really important. And I don't think having Disney wave around a rainbow colored Mickey Mouse is something that helps push that agenda forward.
So that's the end of part 1. So we're going to split this video up. Join us in the next episode where we'll carry on talking about London Bi Pandas, what they achieved, and why they shut down. So join us for the next part. See you there.
Thanks for watching.